After day one of the Blitz tournament in the Grand Chess Tour tournament in Leuven, Sergei Karjakin was the most successful player. We know that he is a tremendous Blitz player. You only need to look at his results in the World Blitz Championships over the past few years to see that. And somehow Blitz suits him incredibly well. He has such a calm temperament. And he's very positionally responsible, so it's not easy to get through, and he simply doesn't blunder very often. So the question was, in day two of the Blitz, could he continue his form and catch up Wesley So in the overall standings? Well, I want to show you one of his games that he played against Anish Giri, who was having a pretty miserable time. Karjakin with white. Started with b3, very pragmatic, very sensible, basically avoiding lots of opening theory. Giri, of course, knows his main lines incredibly well. So by playing b3 very sensibly, that sidesteps things. Bishop b2, attacking the pawn on e5. And now Giri played what's the most popular move, knight c6. But after knight c6, that will allow, we'll see in a moment, the bishop to come to b5. And I think white gets very easy development. I know knight c6 is the most popular move here, but I've always played d6 here, which I think really frustrates players of the white pieces playing with b3. The idea is simply that you're going to go into a kind of King's Indian with knight f6, bishop g7, where, well, I don't think the bishop on b2 is particularly well placed. There's my top tip for you if you're ever facing b3 and bishop b2. Anyhow, knight c6 played, of course, it's a completely acceptable move, but I think this almost kind of justifies white's opening. Bishop comes to b5 and instantly it has a function, and there is more pressure here. Bishop d6, and well, simply looking at this move, this is a justification for white's opening because this feels so unnatural. It's not bad for black, but still, white has something to do. Knight a3, with the idea of bringing the knight to c4 to attack bishop and pawn. And now a very popular move here for black is to play knight a5 to prevent knight c4, and the game reels on in, well, in a slightly bizarre way. But anyway, that's for you to investigate if you wish to do so. Instead, Giri played in some ways a more natural move, e4, so that after knight c4, the pawn won't be on prise and the bishop can just drop back. So this is what happened. And the bishop traded on c6, damaging the pawns to some extent. Knight e2. So white's development is very easy. And here Giri played, I think, a very sensible idea, a5, to use that isolated pawn to attack white's pawn chain. And in fact, Karjakin has played in a very similar way previously. So this is very sensible from both sides. d3. So chips away at that centre pawn. And after this trade, you can see that Giri's strategy has been successful. Trades rooks. He's managed to isolate that pawn on b3. And now he castled. And e4. And this is a very interesting moment in the game where I think in a classical game you would invest a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, to just determine exactly what your strategy is going to be with black, because black still has to develop this bishop, and you also have to determine how you're going to place these pawns. So one method would be d5, which looks a bit ugly because it leaves this pawn just a little bit weak. But in fact, the idea is that you put your bishop on this super solid square, e6, looking at the isolated pawn. And I think chances are balanced here. Instead, Giri, I think, quite typically plays something which looks positionally more responsible. you can see that these pawns all protect each other, and this bishop has the freedom to run either side of those pawns. I think the downside of this is that it actually doesn't put much pressure on White's position. White now has the freedom to attack on the king side, and this is a very pleasant initiative. You can see already that, well, queen and bishop, lovely pressure on this diagonal, and the knights can come into f5. Just, I mean, let me show you, if black makes an obvious move like bishop e6, then this is already incredibly nasty. So bishop takes pawn. Let me just show you what the threat is here. And then knight f5 check comes, and we take on e7 and take the knight on f6. And white has, I would say, a winning position already. Therefore, Giri played g6 to prevent a knight coming into f5. Well, this is all very sensible, but white can intensify the attack with f4. This looks very English. It looks like some kind of weird Grand Prix attack with the e and f pawns advancing. It's really strong in this case. And f5 just puts more pressure on the f file. But black is still okay. But in a blitz game, facing this kind of initiative is very difficult. Queen d3 is very sensible, and it looks quite nasty actually. Suddenly black's queen sort of fills the gap up in the middle of the board, fills the vacuum in the middle of the board. But Karjakin must have foreseen that this move just kind of holds everything together. I mean, this shows his real skill in blitz, keeping really cool, because if knight takes pawn, then knight g4 is a crushing move, threatening the queen and also threatening knight h6 mate. Therefore, Giri dropped the queen. Now he's starting to panic a bit. He can see how strong the queen is on the long diagonal, so obviously he wants to trade. But Karjakin is having none of it. Where do you put the queen? Well, on a dark square is a good idea. This queen might head up to c3, but also might pop out on this diagonal as well. So queen c1, excellent move. And indeed, after bishop b7, queen c3 played. Very unpleasant position for black to play with so much pressure on this long diagonal, and in particular the knight on f6. In fact, black is still okay here. The move is rook d8, which prevents this knight moving because of problems with rook d1 check and a swift counter-attack here, and also threatening to bring the rook or queen down to d3. But here white trades, and then you can take the knight on f6. And this leads to an endgame where I would say white is for choice, but it would be amazing if he won this, I think, with such reduced material, and the rook is so active. I think black should hold this. But instead, Giri saw that this was a threat and played instead h5, but this loses in another way. Knight d5 is a crushing move. So obviously threatening to take something here. So black has to exchange off, and that closes the d file and therefore kills any counterplay. And now black is utterly lost. The game finished like this: queen b6, and now knight e4 just adds more pressure. A check. King f1. It's a spike check. There's no defense to the threats here. King g7 protects the knight, but now a simple move. d6 cuts the queen from protecting f6. And that's game over here. Giri resigned. If pawn takes pawn, of course, we take. That's an extra piece, and that's game over for black's king. crushing victory from Karjakin, and I think, as I said, it showed just how coolly he plays at critical moments, and I think that was a critical moment here where he recognised that this slightly ungainly move, rook f3, was actually incredibly powerful and maintained the initiative. Sergei Karjakin won the Blitz section of the event by half points. He finished with 11.5. Nakamura had 11 and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave 10.5. But it still wasn't enough to win in the overall standings because Wesley So's performance in the Rapids was so strong. But still, very good showing from Karjakin in the Blitz. If you want to see another game from this tournament, then do check out an extraordinary last round encounter between Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So. Just take a look at the, you'll find the link in the description. Just want to let you know that the next PowerPlayChess Hangout will take place this Wednesday. I think should be 7 p.m. UK, but look out for news. I'll post on the channel to let you know. So do join me for the Hangout. That'll be great. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the PowerPlayChess channel. You can see the subscribe button there. And yeah, be interested to hear what you think of these videos. So don't forget the comment section as well. Thanks for watching.